Welcome everyone to the LINEA Webinar. It's the first one of 2016, and we're very excited to have Flora Werneck from Childhood Brasil here to talk with us today about truck drivers and prevention of child sexual exploitation in Brazil. So as many of you know, LINEA is the learning initiative on norms, exploitation, and abuse. We're based at the Gender Violence and Health Center at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And the project's aim is to foster the use of the social norms approach in preventing the sexual exploitation of children and adolescents. So we organize hour-long webinars every 2 months covering different aspects of social norms, structural drivers, and the sexual exploitation and abuse of young people. So I'm really pleased to introduce today Flora Werneck. She began her career as a project coordinator at the United Nations Information Center and as a consultant for national and international organizations. She has a varied background, having led work on corporate social responsibility, communication, major sporting events, and grant making. And she's been with Childhood Brasil as a program coordinator since 2008. And today she'll be discussing their work with truck drivers in Brazil to prevent child sexual exploitation. And she'll also share findings from their surveys, which track changes over time, and the most recent of which was conducted in 2015. So we have results that are sort of hot off the press that we're excited to hear about today. So with that, I'll hand things over to you, Flora.
Thank you, Rebecca, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Here in Brazil, it's still morning. It's a pleasure to be here to participate in LINEA initiative for the second time and share our experience with truck drivers that mix both practical work as well as with a lot of research involved. Before starting, I would like to tell you a little bit about Childhood Brasil. In case you don't know, Childhood Brasil is part of the World Childhood Foundation. It's an international organization founded by Her Majesty Queen Sylvia from Sweden, with the aim of fighting for all childhood free of any kind of abuse and exploitation. It was established in 1999 and have offices in Brazil, Germany, Sweden, and the United States. As opposed to the other office, Brazil not only supports other local-based organizations, but develops a number of programs. And we have a very important and strong experience with the private sector, which I will present one specifically right now regarding the truck drivers, with the transport industry. So we have, since 2002, Childhood Brasil have been noticing that there was happening a lot of sexual exploitation in the highways. However, by that time, we did not know a lot of information of how it was happening, who were the players, and to what extent this was really a problem. So in 2002, we supported the national study on trafficking of women, children, and adolescents for sexual exploitation in Brazil. And this study found out that trafficking and sexual exploitation was happening in a very alarming rate. And at the same time, truck drivers somehow were involved in interstate transporting of people. At the same time, we did not have any other supporting data. So in 2004 and 2005, we had the opportunity to conduct a first national study on the profile of the truck drivers in Brazil. And this time we wanted to know who are the truck drivers, what were their relationship with the commercial sexual exploitation in the highways, and how do they perceive this. We had the opportunity to repeat this research in 2010 and in 2015. So, this is a longitudinal study that we repeat every 5 years, both to understand and assess how this issue is evolving, and as well how we can improve our strategy together with truck drivers. At the same time that we understand that truck drivers somehow play a role in this problem, we acknowledge that 60% of Brazil's highway cargo is part of the private sector responsibility. And therefore, to reach the truck drivers, we decided to start the mobilization through the private sector, understanding that most of the truck drivers, they are in a service of a private sector. So if a company that's social responsible have in her value chain through the truck driver some kind of violation of the children's rights as commercial sexual exploitation, this is something that the companies should be accountable for and should find a solution. And we offer them a solution through the Corporate Business Pact, which is a pact we launched in 2006, inviting a number of companies to find together with us solutions for this problem. In 2009, we added a new partner to this whole story, which is the Federal Highway Patrol. And we have been helping them since 2002, working together to qualify the mapping and understanding of the problem in the highway, as well as training and building capacity of the police meant to deal with children's violations in the highway. So since 2006, we have been developing what we call this On the Right Track program, and we have three main objectives, plus a number of engagement and education actions. Our three main objectives are, first, as I said, the engagement with the private sector through the creation of this corporate pact. Today, we have already engaged almost 1,500 companies. We also offer them, to the signatory companies, a continuing education project, which I'll talk about furthermore. And more than 1 million truck drivers are encouraged to act as protection agents and already had access to our materials. The third objective is a number of intersectorial network activities where we put together and we articulate the private and the public sector to find solutions in the highway, considering the protection of children and adolescents from sexual exploitation. Just to get some number, I mean, this is, I think the lack of data is a global problem, and we in Childhood Brazil have been striving to qualify the information and the data in the issue of commercial sexual exploitation in different settings. Here in the highway, through this partnership I mentioned before with the federal police, the Highway Federal Police, we have been helping them to map what we call vulnerable points to sexual exploitation. So they, through a methodology that we help them build, they have been mapping the vulnerable spots for sexual exploitation in the highways. These vulnerable points means that are areas or establishments that offer some favorable conditions or vulnerable conditions that sexual exploitation can occur there. And the map shows us the points through level of vulnerability. And in this table, you can see the evolution of the number of points mapped all over Brazil, only in the federal highway, and the proportion of critical points. What is interesting of this partnership is that they repeat the same methodology over time, and every edition they add different questions for us to increase our understanding of the setting. So in the last edition, the policemen, while mapping the points, they also included the information, if they had, of the gender of the girls that were or boys that were found in sexual exploitation, and if they belonged from this area. This helped us see if the prevalence of a certain gender, or if the kid was transgender, and if the kid was a victim of traffic, if by any chance she belonged to another city. And these have been bringing us a lot of interesting results that have been helping our strategy and summing up with the studies we have been carrying since 2005. So in this slide, you see that we have carried three important studies. The first one was in 2005 to understand who the drivers were and their connections with the problem. By that time, we conducted the interview with 239 subjects. This was before we launched the pact, the corporate pact, and before we had a number of companies engaged. In 2010, we have this important updating of statistics regarding the truck drivers in Brazil, And we had the opportunity to monitor and assess the effectiveness of the program's action, having control groups with truck drivers that belong to companies that have been developing the continuing education project of the On the Right Track program. By that time, we conducted interview with 342 truck drivers. Last year, we had, again, an important update of these statistics, both to understand how this problem still happens in the highway, to understand, to assess the effectiveness of the program's actions in our control group, and we added the new information that we wanted to have. We started, we assessed through the answers of the truck drivers the conditions of the truck stops where they stop to rest or eat, to gather data to help our advocacy on behalf of better conditions of these stops, understanding that the worse the conditions are, the greater the chance that sexual exploitation and other violations can occur. These interviews, they were conducted with 680 truck drivers all over Brazil. And I will present some of the results. There's a number, the huge number of data. I selected some of the data. I will be happy to share the whole report. We will translate at some opportunity to English. To date, we have it only in Portuguese. And I will also present the results of this assessment of the truck stops and a comparison with companies that use different strategies. So just a quick overview of the profile of the truck drivers. 60% of them are fleet drivers, the greater part of it. 38% are self-employed. When we look at the average time they spent away from home, we have the random group spending around 90 days in 2010 and the control group 12 days. If you look the figures for 2015, for both groups you have a little bit of less time away from home. The same thing happened when we see the average time they have to load and unload. The figures are better for the control group. The control groups are the group of the companies that are the truck drivers that belong to the companies. Their situation is better in both years, but overall, both to the random group and the control group, you see that they are waiting less time to load and unload. But yet, 90% of them believe they are badly viewed by the general population. This figure is even worse than 2010. And around almost 40% of them are truck drivers because they wanted to be. When we ask them about what they expect to find at truck stops, the great majority wants clean bathrooms. And indeed, I mean, I didn't add here, the pictures of the bathrooms and the truck stops are very impressive in a bad way. The conditions are horrible. Followed by good food, cheap food, and TV room is what they expect to see and to have one in the stops. When we look at the sexual practices of the truck drivers, or like how they perceive or their involvement, 62% of them are married. They have an average in this study of 5 sexual partners. In the previous study, it was around 9 sexual partners per year. When you look at the sexual practice on the highways, 95%, I mean, it's almost a common agreement that prostitution is common at the highway truck stops. And 92% state that their colleagues have sex with prostitutes. Although this number is big, it's slightly smaller than 2010. 40% of them say that they had sex while they are in the road, yet is a number smaller than 2010, and 80% say that they have sex with prostitutes. Some of them say that they either have sex, some of them take their wives or visit their wives or have sex with women from the community. By prostitutes, they understand the paid sex, being with paid sex with someone. When we ask specifically about the sexual exploitation of children and adolescents, almost 30% declared that they had had sex with a minor already, with a children or adolescent. This figure is smaller than 2010. And even the figure, when we ask about their colleagues, because sometimes in research they do not say that they had, but when we ask if their colleagues have done, most of them have a colleague that done. We believe that sometimes they hide their answers when they answer about their colleagues. And 48% stated that their colleagues had also had sex with a minor, yet it's a number much smaller than 2010. When we ask them about if it was common to see children or adolescents involved in commercial sexual exploitation in truck stops, this figure also is smaller than we found in 2010, although it's still very big. There was a number of questions of perception that we kind of related social norms as well. We wanted to understand how do they perceive the reasons why truckers would have sex with children and adolescents, or why truckers would not have sex with children and adolescents, and why do children of both sexes prostitute themselves? I mean, when we ask them, we can also see that through the years, and if they belong to the random group or the control group, there's a slight difference. That can be explained by all the work we have been doing of raising awareness for this issue, not only Childhood Brasil through the On the Right Check program, but the whole country with a number of campaigns as well and awareness about children's rights. So you can all see the slides. I suppose you can see the figures of why do they believe truckers have sex with children and adolescents. The figures change slightly when you go to 2015. When we go in the blue table, why truckers do not have sex with children and adolescents, is interesting to say that they know the issue that they know is wrong is something that more or less keeps the same in the biggest percentage than the others. The minors could be their own children is something that always sensitize them, and many companies use this approach for them to look at children in other ways, or to avoid problems with the law. Although this percentage has been decreasing in the way in their answer, this is something that this approach has been more present in the company's way of raising awareness or talking to the truck drivers. And when we ask them about why do they prostitute themselves, yes, they believe that for the financial need of the children and families is the main reason. What is interesting here, although it's still like small advances, but we can see that the truck drivers have been a little bit more aware and more active, for instance, in reporting through the Dial 100, which is our national hotline to report the cases of sexual exploitation. Both in the random group or in the control group, they have been reporting more. When we look at the campaigns, you can see that both in the random group or in the control group, they have the numbers are less, the figures. We expected actually that they would say that it would have more access once we are still in the highways and we engage more companies and companies have been more active. However, there's a number of hypotheses why this could happen. One is that overall they have been speaking more, or somehow they have been, it's so common to receive that they did not remember by the time they heard. But this was an interesting figure for us. We expected it to be different. When we evaluated the truck stops, we went to truck drop. We had some criteria to truck stops that offered a good condition, like clean bathroom, good food, a decent place to rest, and truck stops that offer the bad conditions. And in this place, we interviewed the truck drivers in the same way. And it was very interesting to see that how the stops that offer the worst conditions had worse results regarding a number of norms here. For instance, the drink alcohol, the search for sex. You can see in the table there how the figures in the bad stops are greater than in the stops that offered good condition. The colleagues that would have sex with minors. The truck driver that declared that they already have sex with the minors. Knowledge about the legislation or even about the Dial 100. We have much more figures about that, but I just tried to select one that illustrate how truck stops with bad conditions can really influence the search for commercial sexual exploitation or other violations or other bad habits that they could have. I would also like to present two company cases. I was not allowed to say the company names as they were yet not presented to the results. This research was just launched in November, December last year, so it's pretty new. But it's interesting to see how there's a slight difference between two companies, regarding the response of the truck drivers that work for them. Both companies are member of the On the Right Track program since the beginning, 2007. The program was launched in 2006. Company one develops an ongoing implementation of the continuing education project. However, they emphasize on human and civil rights. They have a whole, they invest in the perception of the truck drivers of their rights, their sexuality, their family, their health. And the other company is a member in the same time, the same period, and have as well been developing the continuing education project. Figures are good, but yet it's not as good as the company one. And they implement the education project with a focus in the punitive perspective, saying that they will be caught, that the law is like that, and not making them reflect about their role as a human being, about their gender role, and how they can reflect upon some norms too, in order to diminish some violations or some bad habits. So you can see here the sex with prostitutes. The first company, they have smaller figures. If the colleagues have sex with prostitutes as well, if they declare already that had sex with a minor, knowledge about children's rights violations. There's a number of figures here. I believe you can see that shows how the company with the approach more based emphasize on the human and civil rights have more interesting, more desirable in our perspective and in the way corresponding to our goals results than the second one. Overall, it was very interesting to see how it decreased considerably the number of truck drivers that would have sex with prostitutes. The number of hypotheses as well. The study is very rich on hypotheses and different insights that we will explore over this year. So just to try to connect with the aspects related to social norms, which is pretty much the focus of LINEA, we find 4 key social norms that we already found in 2010, and that some of them are the same, some of them are different depending on the group we are watching, and some of them we could see an overall change. The first of them is that poor working conditions related to truckers' rights, how the poor working conditions related to truckers' rights affect the violation of children's rights. So the less the truck driver's rights or conditions are respected, the more likely they are to violate others' rights. And the data on the condition of the drug stops indeed reaffirm that it increases the vulnerability to commercial sexual exploitation. The second one is the strong identity related to truck drivers, the acceptance of cheating, paid sex, sexual exploitation, and the role of woman. In the random sample, we understood that this identity is still the same. I mean, this norm did not change. However, in the control group, we find slightly better results over this strong identity, which we believe and we attribute to the whole work we have been doing with them. The third one is the gender rules, like clear rules about what means to be a man. What we found is an even greater conservatorism among the group in 2015. At the same time, which is interesting, a less involvement with commercial sexual exploitation. We found the great part of the group, they were religious and they were evangelics, which may explain this, but at the same time, a group that fear even more the police and this part, more than the respect for gender and children. And the last one, in 2010, what we noticed that the truck drivers were unaware of the stages and development cycle of children and adolescents. And this could be one of the reasons why they would naturally exploit or abuse the children and adolescents. What we have noticed, both in the random control groups, is that there is an increase in the overall awareness of these stages, both in the control group and the random group. However, the results are better in the control group due to the company's activities and intervention with the continuing education project. The main strategies we use with the truck drivers, I'm speaking about continuing education project, but what does it mean? It's an ongoing or lasting action that we do with truck drivers in Brazil through the companies to transform them in protection agents for the rights of the children and adolescents. We participate in a number of events, magazine articles, and radio programs geared for truckers to reach them. And we usually explain them their role of truck drivers as protection agents. At the same time that we fight for their rights, we invite them to join our fight to the protection of children and adolescents. Our main instrument of the continuing education project is a guide series that look at the life of the road on the road through two characters that we call Geraldo and Marcelo. And we have 11 guides where we talk about a number of issues that are of the interest of the truck drivers, but always talking about the importance of the protection of children with an emphasis in commercial sexual exploitation. So you can see the kind of subjects that we talk about with them. And we were lucky enough to have this guy in the picture that he's an opinion maker of the truck drivers in Brazil. His name is Pedro Trucão. He has a radio program, and he's someone that they respect a lot. And he offered us a space in his a weekly space in his radio program. And he's the voice of almost all our communications with the truck drivers, which helped us a lot get a message through as is someone that they respect. When we talked about transforming them as a protection agent, we, as I said, promote the rights of the truck drivers, understand that someone that has their rights violated wants to protect the rights of the other. We create and develop and disseminate knowledge about fighting sexual exploitation on the highways. We create a support for an actioning network by engaging the public, the private, and non-governmental organizations that are related to the highways. We explain the role of truck drivers as protection agents, and we propose every means possible to help the children or adolescents that are found in this situation. Just some brief lessons and challenges for future prevention that we found in this study and that we found through our more than 10 years of experience. The first lesson is that since we began this longitudinal study, over 10 years, we see that there's a considerable report of paid sex with children under 18 years old. These results are even better in the control group, so we celebrate these results. Based on our experience, company that offers content and an approach based on civil and human rights have better results with truck drivers. The adolescents is that understanding how working conditions for understand how working conditions are related to sexual exploitation, like in a systemic perspective. And this we could see pretty much well as well when we look at the truck stops and the figures for sexual exploitation in the stops where we had the worst conditions. The challenge we have is, yes, develop a positive gender models through reference networks, changing behaviors through better understanding of gender issues rather than by a legal or punitive perspective, reach self-employed truck drivers. I mean, we have better results with the control group as we have the companies being our key speaker, like someone that can speak and about the cause and reach the truck drivers. And last, the challenge that we have here, that's one of our key advocacy for the next years, is to look for considerable improvement in the truck stops and resting areas. For our information, I just put some links of some articles that was already published with this data. The first one is in English. Just if you guys are interested in looking a little bit more, some different analysis that could be done with this data.
Thank you, Ana Flora. We have one question already from Anastasia. Would you like to unmute yourself by pressing *7 if you can and ask your question directly?
Hi. There were two questions really. I was just wondering, what is whether the research also shows the exact role that truck drivers have in internal human trafficking in Brazil, and if they play a role in that. In other words, do truck drivers take money from traffickers to transport children to another destination in Brazil where they will be sexually exploited? Or are we just talking about the role of truck drivers as customers of children?
Thank you for your question, Anastasia. We are talking both as customers as well as somehow involved, but we do not have data to say if they receive like money from the criminal network, but they can maybe give a lift to a girl or a boy to move from one place to the other. So both as customers are somehow, helping them to help the transit, but not necessarily receiving for that. This was found in the 2002 research. Looking, once we understood that the truck drivers were one of the players, in this problem, in this situation, we decided to invest in the understanding of the truck drivers and to intervene through improving their role in the highways, transforming them, as we say, protection agents.
Thank you. And my other question, if I could, basically, I just wanted to make sure I understood. Are you saying if there are better conditions at the stops and at where the truck drivers unload, in other words, if there are cleaner toilets, better food, better lighting, just generally better conditions, they are less likely to sexually exploit children? Because instinctively, it seems to me the other way around. The better conditions, the more likely there's a nice room and to do all this stuff. So I don't quite understand the link by having a better stop, better conditions at the stop. Why does that mean that people are going to abuse children less if conditions are better? I don't understand the link, really.
We find this data both in the mapping of the federal police and as well as in this new study. It's quite, I don't know if I'll be able to explain from it, it's quite obvious. Usually when you have the worst conditions, you have the less supervision. If you have less light, you have more things happening without for instance, the police control, or so to speak. People know that nothing will happen, so it's more likely that you have not only sexual exploitation, but drug trafficking or animal trafficking or different kinds of criminal activities. We also saw, and I didn't say that, but I mean, there's a huge link with sexual exploitation with a number of other criminal or illegal activities. And this is actually one of the arguments we use with the companies when we look at their risk management, when we discuss the risk management, how to improve and to make truck drivers more aware of sexual exploitation, you have better less risks results. But I mean, if they have a place to rest, if they have internet, if the place is more safe, it's less likely to have children being exploited. I mean, here in Brazil it's a crime. So I mean, this would not happen in a place that is more that offer a better condition. People would not go there.
Yes, I know what you mean. So from what you're saying, it seems to me then that it happens less because they are less likely to get caught, not because their behaviour is changing, but because it's less easier for someone to do it if there is better lighting, not because the conditions as such are making them behave in a different way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what I mean, but I believe I think it's both cases are true. I mean,
right,
it's as well because of things, but as well because they feel respect. If you see, Anastasia, overall, there's a reduction. It's a period that I only have 30 minutes. It's so interesting the results we found. You can see that overall the search for sex, being with prostitutes or with children and adolescents, had decreased. At the same time, the internet use have increased considerably. So there's an hypothesis here that we hold that the whole Tinder or apps or things that they share in the apps might be substituting somehow the search for sexual activities, for instance. If they can be entertained or they have stop with better conditions, offer other leisure activities. Some of the truck drivers, they would have sex with children because sometimes sometimes they say that it's what appears or it's what is available. At the same time, more and more truck drivers are stating that this is wrong. So, I mean, there's a lot of awareness that have been improving from there to now. And we still hold the hypothesis that the better the people are treated, the better they will treat the other.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
I had a question, Ana Flora. You had mentioned on one of the slides, I think it was the slide on social norms, one of the slides mentioned an increasing recognition of the phase of adolescence. And I was just wondering if you could talk about that component, the fourth one, what that component in the intervention and on the right track looked like, or how that component is designed.
We, in 2010, it was very clear to us that they did not perceive children as children. They kind of made they are there because they want, it's not my fault. I mean, they want to offer their bodies and I am willing to buy, They pretty much, since 2005, we see that this is pretty much how they perceived sex with children. This was not my choice. They want, they are there. And you can see that these overall figures have been changing. Through our continuing education project, which is our intervention, we insist in the perspective that they are children and adolescents, that are human beings in physical, emotional, and psychological development, and that have stages of development, being of cycles now of the childhood, adolescence. And if you do that, you are violating one of the stages. So this is pretty much what we have been. Once we understood that they are not seeing them as children, but as someone that have been there. A lot of arguments such as if they already have sex, they are not children. If they use lipstick, they are not children. If they already have boobies, they are not children, So we started to work through our interventions how we can make them understand that even if they have all these things, it's still not their option to be there. If they were there were a number of violations before, and instead of paying for sex, they should act as protection agents. In the third research, what we noticed was better figures regarding their understanding of children in their stage, like less of these arguments such as they were there, that's what were available, children should, is their right to do that or whatever.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. I'm sure I'll follow up with you about that in the coming months. Are there other questions? I don't see any others typed, but if anyone would like to type a question or ask a question out loud.
Hi, this is Patty Pettish. I just wanted to, in relation to the previous comment, I'm sorry I've forgotten your name. There's a theory that is very controversial called the broken windows theory. Part of that theory holds that your immediate surroundings affect your behaviors. If it's a neighborhood where windows are broken, there's graffiti, there's, old broken down cars, there's trash everywhere, it invites an attitude that rules don't necessarily apply here.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get away with more. And so you see just more crime. Now, this theory's been debunked by some, but shown to work by others. So it's controversial, but it's out there, and it's interesting to even just Google the Wikipedia page on it. My question, though, has to do with, because I'm thinking about this right now for a study I'm setting up, the research ethics that surround interviewing clients of underage sex workers. How do you manage that?
You say that our interview was to clients?
Well, if a man confides, yes, I purchased sex with underage.
Well, our interview, we call it social biodemographic. So it's a study that we call like the study about the life of the truck drivers. We conducted with psychologists, so the interviews were conducted by psychologists, mm-hmm. and we usually go and rest in truck stops, in resting areas, in gas stations, places where they would be available, like in this, or either waiting to load or unload. So we'll be speaking. Before you reach this question, there's a number of other questions that we would ask, and it was pretty much it was like there was a tablet which the psychologist would work with, and when you ask, we are not looking at them as clients. We would not approach them like that. But these questions would appear in the middle of a number of others. So we would ask if they already had sex with minors, and then if their friends had sex with minors. So it was some interviews lasted 4 hours.
Wow.
Because what we noticed, sometimes they needed someone to speak to, and they were, they used this opportunity to speak and to ask about a number of things, even about their own relationship. They would show videos on WhatsApp. They would say how the Internet, it's incredible how Internet, WhatsApp, have changed the overall behavior and leisure activities of the truck driver. About everyone, but about the truck drivers as well. So I don't know if it was really what
I guess it's more the question, are there any kind of legal reporting obligations if a child may be at risk?
Yeah, of course. We have, if we saw any children at risk, we would, if they saw any children at risk, they would report right away. But we would not go to any place where they would be sexually abusing. We would go to resting areas because we wanted to understand their behaviors, their profiles, and it was more like a conversation. It was not to get them in action.
Right. I understand that. I'm just trying to, I'm just wondering what the rules, the maybe legal obligations that might be on researchers to report. And perhaps in Brazil there are none. And I'm just trying to explore this area.
If they see anyone, they would report. But, if they say that, okay, I have already had sex with children and adolescents, because the question was, have you already had sex with a minor?
Okay.
And then, I mean, if in Brazil, if you're not caught, if you don't have like legal proof, so to speak, I mean, based on one answer that they had already done that, and we don't know if, you know, like in which circumstance or if it was true, we cannot, it's not something that is subject for reporting, if you know what I mean.
Okay. That's exactly what I'm trying to understand, to make sure that the issues don't pop up in doing this kind of research.
Yeah. No, but this is something we took care of.
Thank you, Patty. A few more questions have come through, and I might just, for time's sake, I'll just read them. So the first says, and this is from Jenny, I'm interested in the profile of the truck drivers. Is there a typical age or social class? Are they from specific regions, and are there regional differences in the data?
Yes, they were. I mean, we conducted the interview in, I think, 6 or 7 states in Brazil. I mean, but Brazil is a huge country. We would interview whoever was there, so we did not. They were who was available. I can look for the data, or I can send you later on, not to spend much time. We have all the information of where they are from. The social class, they are not median class. I mean, we have also the figures of their earnings. Although their earning is greater than in 2005, it did not correspond the inflation rate. So, I mean, yes, they are not a class that are rich or something like that. We also found changes in the women that are more in the labor market more, their wives that are in the labor market more than they were in 2005. Regional data, difference in the data, yes, especially in the north and northeast. According to the research, is the regions in Brazil that are more like overall vulnerable. My mail is there, so if you email me, I'll be happy to share. I mean, for now we have it in Portuguese. I don't know if you read in Portuguese, but we will soon translate it to English, and I'm happy to share the English version.
Okay, and we can send that to everyone who attended today. And another question was if you could confirm the number of interviews that were conducted with drivers in 2010 and 2015.
2010, 342. 2015, 680.
Okay. And from Hugh, he asked the average length of time away on the road, was that per trip, or was that the total days per month or total days per year?
Total days per month.
I had one more question, Ana Flora, which was just, and you talked about this a little bit, but have you had difficulty engaging the private sector, or have they been eager to participate?
Right. In 2006, before we launched the program, we had to do a lot of advocacy and face-to-face meetings to try to have, when we launched the program, we want to have at least 50 companies already engaged, just to influence other companies, and to have more like a peer-to-peer strategy. It was very hard by the time because the companies did not want to be involved in this subject. It's more attractive to be engaged with the protection of, like if the panda bear or environment issues or women. But when you say about sexual exploitation and you have a corporate pact and you start working with the truck drivers, somehow you put your business related to this subject. In the beginning, we found a lot of resistance, but the resistance was losing through time. That's why we have a lot of companies that have been looking for this work. It's one of the corporate practice pacts with the greater number of companies, and we have indicators to assess how the companies have implementing the activities we propose for the pact. And we have companies from other sectors asking us to develop like similar activities. So Childhood also have programs and strategies to tourism and big construction. Like 3 sectors that we understand that reunite a number of vulnerabilities to sexual exploitation.
So you have others coming to you now?
Others coming to us. This means that the resistance changing to people like wanting to solve this problem. People don't want, before they did not want to have their brand related to something that was sexual exploitation of children, something so ugly. Now they want to have because they want to show that they are not involved in this problem, that they are looking at this problem in a special way, that they are fighting it, that they don't want to have their value chain related with this problem.
So the norms are kind of changing in terms of what it means to be involved in this work too, for the companies. Well, I think we're just about out of time, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, Ana Flora, for sharing your work and those links, and we'll send your contact information out for anyone who wants to follow up.
Thank you, Rebecca, very much.